if we can just move past the puritanical shame around sex, and if we can just look at it like, oh, what a beautiful thing that they can still engage in that helps them feel human, right? Sex just humanizes us. Pleasure just humanizes us. And so if we can just move past our own stuff, then it's like, oh yeah, that's actually a really beautiful thing.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started. All right, Be It Babes, we have one of those amazing guests that you all loved back. And you know how I loved her? Because your downloads don't lie. So we had her on the show before talking about sex and being it till you see it. Was one of our most downloaded, most listened to, most shared podcast. And I'm just so freaking grateful. And I interviewed a friend of hers, Erin Bowdy, on the Enneagram. And I was like, gosh, you know what? I just want to have her back on. So it's my show. I'm going to do what I want. So when she was on the show the first time, we didn't get to the deep topic about bodies and our bodies and how we feel about them in the bedroom or wherever you're having sex. So this episode is about sex. And if you don't normally listen with AirPods and you don't want other people to hear that you're listening to this, then AirPod yourself. However, you know what? Maybe you just let people hear about it with you. Because the more we take away shame and just being embarrassed around this topic, the better it is for all of us and everywhere. So here's the most amazing Dr. Celeste Holbrook for you. And I cannot wait to hear how you love it. All right, Be It Babe. I am so thrilled to have this guest back. So if you haven't listened to her first episode, you are going to want to check out the show notes and make sure you listen to that one next, or pause this one, listen to that one, and come back to this one, because Dr. Celeste Holbrook is back, and in just an amazing way. I've been following her since we had her on the show. And first of all, I just want to say one of our top downloaded shows. So people are definitely interested in this topic. So I had to have you back. Dr. Celeste, will you tell everyone who you are and what you do, just in case they don't know you yet?
Hi, Lesley. Well, thanks so much for having me back. My name is Celeste. I'm a sex educator. I help people find pleasure in the areas of their bedroom and their life. And I'm excited to chat today and extend our conversation from last time.
Yeah. So me too. So, okay. One of the things that I think we talked about kind of like at the end of our last episode and when we got off of the recording was like, just even bodies, like how we feel about our bodies, how we feel in our bodies, what even society makes us feel about our bodies, how that can affect us in having sex, being in the bedroom, being and out in the world. And so I kind of wanted to start off with that and kind of hear what your thoughts are and how you kind of work with people in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we both, have this interesting perspective about body. You're working so much helping people be within their body. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation and this dialogue because I think it's so important. So as a sex educator, I'm working with people one-on-one, I'm working with couples, and something that comes up so often is I don't feel comfortable in my body, or I don't feel comfortable getting naked, or I don't want to have sex with the lights on. It's a really common one. Or if I just, fill in the blank, then sex would be better. And so that's probably where I want to start, is that in terms of sex, the way that your body looks is such a tiny part of your sensual experience. So if we think of sensuality as the use of your senses, you're talking about the way your partner tastes and the way your skin feels and the way your clitoris feels and what you're hearing, the noise of your partner breathing. And so you're having this beautiful, big sensory experience that has, and your vision or your partner's vision is such a small part of that experience, right? And it's so clouded by culture and society and what we deem as appropriately sexy. And so you can have the most beautiful orgasmic, erotic, wild, lovely sexual experience in whatever body that you have. It's like, it's not required to look a certain way in order to have great sex.
Okay. Love everything. I'm like, right there. Like, that's just like, please, like, rewind, save that, because I don't think people even think about it that way. The way you just like laid out what our sexual experience can be has very little to do with how we look, because that's not even where we're feeling. And it's
Right.
it's so funny because like it sounds so simple, and yet that none of us are thinking about that. You, like you said, we're like, oh, if I look a different way, or if I lose some weight, or if like all these different pressures we put on ourselves, as if that's what's going to make the sex better. But that's not it at all. What you just said is like not it at all.
Right. And to be fair, you might feel better if you put on a piece of lingerie that you feel really great in, right? But I think, as we're going to dig in today, that's more about actually feeling safe in your body than it is about looking a certain way. And maybe we just jump right in here. So
Let's go there.
Okay. So I have this theory about the way that we interact with our own bodies. And I've been calling it the harm reduction theory. I don't know if that's a great use of that term, but basically I feel like the things that we do, and I'm going to say as women, but this applies for anybody, but women have more pressure from society to appear a certain way, right? The things that we do to manipulate our appearance, we do them to help reduce the negative messaging that actually gets through. So think about it like armor, and that's why I call it the harm reduction approach. So my eyelashes that I put on, my nails, or whatever it is that you're doing, makeup, boob job, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're doing to alter your appearance is in an effort to feel safe from the negative messages we continue to get, right? So putting on eyelashes, putting on makeup is kind of the price I pay to be heard sometimes. Like, I want people to pay attention to me, so I'm going to look like they want me to look a lot of the times. And so I think that helps give us some compassion, both directions, like compassion for the woman who has a BBL, right? We want to like sometimes tear her down. Compassion for the woman who doesn't do anything at all. We want to sometimes tear her down. So it's a way to give compassion to all ends of the spectrum, really, of how we interact with our own appearance in the world.
Yeah. All of that. And it's so true. You said feeling safe in our body. And one of the things like that attracted me to doing Pilates was I actually felt like I was in my body for the first time. Like I was like, oh, what am I feeling? I've never felt before. oh, this is me being in my body. Right. So like, I can so relate to what you're saying and understand it, because I think so many people are disassociated from their body, from feeling things that one, they don't feel safe inside it because it's not familiar to them. And then we are doing all these things, or we think we do all these things to be like, feel seen and feel heard. And all of it keeps you from actually just feeling like all that stuff, feeling safe, unless you are consciously making the choice. I'm doing this because it makes me feel a certain way. So what are your steps for helping women, or everyone listening, but like, how do we start to feel safe in our body? Like, how, like, do we need to like touch ourselves more? Do we need to like be with ourselves more? Like, what are those steps that maybe like baby steps to like the next level?
Yeah. Well, since I am usually viewing the lens of sex, let's talk about it in terms of sex, right? So I think the first step really for feeling great in your own sex life and safe in your own body is to become aware of what you want your sex life to feel like emotionally, because then you can start to build in, these are the behaviors that help me feel the way I want to feel. So let's say you and I are partners and we do this activity together. So I sit down and I say, okay, my dream sexual experience would feel, and I really get down to like, what do I want to experience emotionally when I'm with you in a sexual experience? I want to feel erotic, wild, connected, and loved. Okay. So those are my feelings. And then you write down, I want to feel intimate and close and connected and safe. Right. And so then we look at both of our lists and say like, oh, we're both looking for connection. We're both looking for some fun. And I have some words over here that maybe you don't have, and you have some words over here that I don't have, but at least we know what we're both kind of going for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we know emotionally what we want, and then you can start building behaviors. And so if the behaviors, and I'm coming around to body in a second.
Yeah.
So then the behaviors might be like, okay, we both want to feel connected in sex. What if we spend a little bit more time talking before sex? What if we had more sex where we are looking at each other instead of you're looking at the back of my neck or something like that? And so then when you get down to the behaviors, then's where you start to say like, oh, I feel uncomfortable when you're looking at me straight on, right? Then you can start to understand or feel like, oh, that's this place where I feel a little something's coming up, you know? And I really don't love the word insecure, because I think a lot of women aren't necessarily insecure. I think they are driven by culture to tell you like, you don't look okay, right? When deep down, I'm pretty secure, but everybody's telling me I shouldn't be because of the way that my body works or looks.
Right. Okay. Yes. So I love that you worked backwards. That's a great way to think about it. Like, it's like, okay, where does it work? The end result is how we want to feel at this stage. And then what are the behaviors that will get us there? And then seeing which behaviors feel good or feel like I would like to run away from that right now. And then going inward on those things. And that can be stuff we have to do around our bodies, or it could be other things we have to explore with our partner or with ourselves. And so that is really interesting. And I also have never had anyone talk about insecure in that way. I think you're completely correct. And you should do a TEDx on this.
Oh, thanks. I should do that.
I think you should, because we are walking around thinking we're just insecure when really we actually know what we want, but it's the outside world that's telling us that we're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Because would you feel that way about your body if you were alone on a fucking island?
No.
You would not. No. So it's not about you. It's about everybody else.
So, oh my goodness. Where do we start with that? Do we like start with our children? Do we have to start with ourselves, right. I think, because actions are caught, not taught. But, okay. So, okay. We got through the steps of like how we could figure out where our work needs to be. What have you found in working with couples and people on bodies that they've enabled, like maybe some steps or some tips or some tools that have helped them kind of get around that? Because I hate saying, okay, just turn the lights off, because that would be a terrible, like right. Your partner wants to see you. I'm sure they are with you. So where do we, is it they've got to work with a therapist? Like, is that outside of your scope? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So some things that, let's start here. Most people feel a little weird on some level, on some things in sex, like, the way that I feel right now is not great or whatever. So this is not, if you're listening, I don't want you to feel like you're out of the ordinary. If you feel, these feelings of insecurity or discomfort around your appearance or your body in sex, that's most people. You're not alone. Right. And so I think the next step for once you have identified the behaviors that you want to engage in that help you feel what you want to feel, then is where you do the work where you are so beautiful at emulating is embodiment, is really, okay, when we're in this behavior that we both agree on brings us connection, how do I continue to get back into my body? Because a lot of times in sex, we will spectator, which is where we feel like we're watching the event instead of being inside the event, or like, oh, should I be louder? Should I be softer? Should I, pull my sheets up over my butt or whatever? And so noticing that, oh, you know what? I'm not in my body right now. I'm going to come back into my body. What does my clitoris feel like? What do my boobs feel like? What is the feeling of my partner's hand on my butt? Like getting back into your actual body, using your senses. And we call that anchoring. And Pilates and yoga and all kinds of different movement activities are really helpful for a lot of people in that practice. Okay, return back into my body so that I can have an experience with you that feels fully embodied and pleasurable and present. So the process of anchoring is the answer to that question, I think.
Yeah. And also like, shout out to Pilates. Because I always say like how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if you're distracted in your movement practice, you're going to be distracted while you're driving, be distracted while you're having sex. Like you're going to be distracted. Like we have to have these moments where we practice how we want to feel and be so that we can draw upon them when it's needed, like a strength and a muscle. I'm going to totally sidetrack our conversation. Just want you to know that Joseph Pilates definitely created Pilates for sex. He actually,
that's awesome.
He told, there's a book called The Caged Lion. John Steele wrote it. And Joseph Pilates took John on a walk and he's like, you need to have more sex. And John was like thrown off by this 80-year-old man telling him what he needed to do. And he said, all of the exercises I created are so people could have better sex.
I love that. I really need to know more about this. I need all the information here.
So
it's so true.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think like, our society is so harsh on our bodies and what we're supposed to look like. And even as a body positivity movement, unfortunately, as women who are bigger bodies, if they do go on a journey of weight loss for whatever reason, personally, professionally, whatever that is, they're attacked for it. So like on both spectrums, like you said earlier, we cannot win. You cannot, it doesn't really matter. Someone's going to hate on you from any side. And so, what have you found? I mean, you have daughters, you work with a lot of women. What have you found to help women who maybe have not realized that they're not insecure, that they just haven't owned what they know about themselves and how they want to feel?
Yeah. I really love, I was on board for body positivity until I realized it was still about the body. And so I love the idea of actually just neutrality. I don't have to love my body, but I don't have to hate her. And so body neutrality is just like, yeah, this is my body. And this is how she functions, this is how she doesn't function. And this is how we're going to work together to get through life. And sometimes that does mean not shaming yourself for engaging in those harm reduction activities of maybe it is weight loss, right? Maybe it is surgery, right? Maybe it is something that helps you move through the world in a safer way. And that's okay. Like we have to be okay with that for women to do that and continue to march towards the idea that my body, I am more than my body, right? I'm so much more. And so, it is interesting. I do have, as you say, twin daughters who are 11, and there are no two humans on earth that are compared more than identical twin girls. Oh, she's the blank one. Oh, she's the blank one. And it's always around appearance versus boys that get a little bit more like, oh, he's the athletic one, or he's the smart one, or whatever. Identical twin girls are compared more than any other two humans on the earth. Their bodies, right? People talk about their bodies all the time.
It's so crazy. That has to be so hard to like observe.
Oh, I call it out now actually so much. People want to say like, oh, she's the bigger one, or she's the taller one, or she's the littler one, or she's the whatever one, or she has a freckle, or she has short hair, she has brown hair. Like actually Zoe really loves art and Ella really loves theater. And, I will like redirect the conversation so hard just to try and change the way that we automatically make comments about women's bodies from the get-go. To the point where I think I almost went too far. One of my daughters asked me the other day, she asked me like, Mom, do you think that I am pretty? Because I never ever say anything about their appearance, right? And I was like, oh, maybe I went too far, Celeste.
The pendulum swung.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess like that. First of all, I think it's amazing that she even came to you. So like kudos to like, you obviously taught her a lot, but also like you're trying to protect her so much from that. And she's going to be they're both going to be inundated with it in all of life outside of the household. So it's kind of hard. That's a hard thing to walk. But I had not thought about that, about like, just, it's okay to like it's almost like the word whelmed. It's okay to be whelmed about your body. Like, you can just like, it's like, it doesn't have to be this thing that I love or I hate. I can actually be very neutral about it. We can all be neutral about everybody's bodies. And then maybe we'll see even some of those harm reduction things even reduce, because people won't be needing to seek certain ones out, or many out, just for feeling seen.
Yeah. I love that you are getting where I'm trying to go. I feel like I'm like all the way over the place right now, but like, that's where I would love us to do just as much harm reduction as we need in order to continue to move forward in diversity of body, and where we can see, and I think, and I would love to hear your view on this. I think we've done a lot in the last, I would say 5 years. I think we've really, like, you're seeing so much more diversity online, and you're seeing all these different right? I think it's really great.
Mailer I get, I like will look at, I'm like, oh, they kept her stretch marks in. Oh, they kept this in. And so like, I notice it in a way that like excites me, because it becomes more the norm. Like, you're just saying that. I'll actually, so I grew up in a household where my grandmother was over 300 pounds. She'd lose 100, gain 100. Fin was like the best thing. She was so sad it was taken off the market. So I've definitely, like, I was in a diet culture household. I just thought you were on a diet or you were off a diet, but like, it was like, there was only two choices. Yeah, that's it. You don't just like enjoy the food that you're eating. Shout out to like the snack wells, right? So,
the 100 calorie packs.
Oh yeah. We had 3 different types of milk in the house. So skim milk, 2% whole milk. Because my brother had to gain weight. I should be losing weight. Like the whole thing. That's not my parents' fault. I was doing a modeling thing. So at any rate, I do get what you're going with this. And the reason I noticed those things in a positive way is because when I was a first Pilates instructor, this woman came into the studio, and I was running the studio, and she went to the teacher, and the teacher was like, okay, so what are your goals? Like why are you seeking out Pilates? Which is like a typical thing you'd ask people for any reason they're trying to hire you. Right. And the girl goes, well, I want to look like her. And she puts an ad of a woman in lingerie, in front of us. And, the teacher was like, well, you're very beautiful. I don't like, why do we need to look like her? She's like, cause that's me. She's like, I'm the model, and they have airbrushed her. So she's the model for this line, and they airbrush her. So everything that's put out is not her. It's not her real body that we're looking at right now. It's not like she had a baby and she's trying to get back to who she was. No, like she's trying to be something that does not exist in physical form. And I remember going, holy fuck, what are we all doing here? Like, what are we doing here? How am I contributing to this? I did not have the tools at the time, but like, I've definitely in the last 5 years have seen like how there are tools out there that we can, no matter what size business you have, like tap into, and also just being kind and like changing different words. But that was not the first model that I ever saw do that. Another girl, I was at a pool event for a bunch of fitness influencers, and she's like, yeah, I'm just trying to look like this again. I'll just like this. And I said, I don't really understand. She's like, well, she used her own app to remove her ribs to like look a certain way. And I really was just like having such a hard time, because I was just looking at all these people who, because of what society was doing to them or they're doing to themselves, that was actually not reducing harm. It was actually causing harm. And so I really like the where you're going. And I feel like, we have come so far in 5 years, in the last 5 years. I think we have a lot more work to do on people, not judging people wherever they are on their journey in their own bodies. And that's where I get like really frustrated, because I get frustrated for the girls that one of them works for us in another capacity, and she's sharing her journey, and she was trying to lose weight. She's trying to have a baby. She's type 1 diabetic, and people were just either criticizing her for trying to be a teacher or criticizing her for trying to lose weight. And I was like, oh my gosh, this poor girl. Like, it's not our place to decide what she wants to look like. So I really appreciate you bringing that up in this episode, because I think we can all think about how are we, first of all, forgiving ourselves for doing harm reduction acts that we might be participating in or want to. And then also maybe being kinder, as you said earlier, to the people who are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is that we're all trying to feel better. We're all trying to like move in this way towards something that feels like vitality for our own life. Right. And probably a year from now, I'll think back to this conversation and be like, I would have said something different, right? Because I think about that on a year ago's podcast, and I'm on a journey too. But I think that us as a whole, and maybe I'm talking about women, us as a whole, moving towards the idea that all our bodies are okay.
Yeah.
And, they're all welcome here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to another podcast, and it's a comedian, and somebody criticized how she like did a 90-second thing on a holiday. And she said, when you're a professional speaker and you like speak for a living, just about it's just a numbers game. You're going to say things that you're like, I should have said that a little bit differently, or I should have been a little bit more clear, or this or that. She's like, but sound bites or clips, like, or reels only have 90 seconds. Like you're reduced to hoping people can read between the lines. And of course, somebody somewhere is going to take something, especially anything we say, even today or any episode I've ever had, out of context. And hopefully it is for conversation and not a accusation. I think there's a difference there. Like, and I think also, being kind to ourselves about the intent we had at the time we said it. Yeah. And as we get older, we learn more, the more information, the more people you coach, I'm sure like you'll even, maybe it's not a harm reduction theory. It's you change the words, whatever. And I think like, that's part of, if we can even start to be kind to each other for being in process of figuring out the theories that we're working on. Yeah. That's even a one maybe step towards being kind to each other about how we look.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And like, I recently have been really, working on being called in, like, being called in for whatever. This probably happens to you too, happens to everybody. Somebody DM'd me the other day, like, what you said on this reel or it was a webinar I was doing about menopause was really harmful to me. And I felt like it was a not great suggestion. And I went and got some help from a different provider, and this is what they said. And this was really helpful. And I thought you should know. And I just wanted you to know that this was my experience with your content. I was like, whew, all right, though. Okay. Like I went back and listened to it, and I was like, I could see where she was coming from. Right. And so what I have been working on is creating thickness around being called in so that I can be better, and sometimes people call you and you're like, yeah, I don't know. But a lot of times there is a little bit of a grain of opportunity to learn in there. And so I think it goes both ways, calling in kindly and also not being too fragile about when it happens,
Yeah, I think that calling in kindly is like is the thing there though. Like I actually love that she cared enough about you.
Yeah.
And the content that you're putting out there to share that what you suggested or what she heard was not helpful, but here's what was. And that kind of feedback it does feel like a kick to the stomach. But also it's like, wow, had this person not told me, went and got help, I may not know that I could rephrase this, or I could requalify this, or whatever. And I think so that's really cool, because so few people will actually take the time to share that. Other people will take no time at all to be kind, and they will just and for that, it's like hard, because it's like there's no actual back and forth. There's no way to actually lean into that and engage in a conversation. So I think it's like, yes, I have had to as well. And sometimes like, I've looked at it and I'm like, okay, I can see what you're saying. That is really not at all the intent of that. And like, how can we keep going forward without having that intent? Like, what do we need to change the words? Do we need to change this thing? Like, and so I think, and then also who's saying it also matters to me. Like, I'm like, have I always been creating this for you, or are you actually better suited, like for this over here. And that's like, so, it's hard to know, but it's like, it's better to even like evaluate and go, where does this feel? Where did I make, like, what can I learn from this? And, and then also like, we're always learning. I think it's really hard as people who are seekers of a topic, of course, we're considered experts. And so we are held to a higher standard, but at the same time, like we're still human beings. There's still more to learn.
Yeah.
There's still types of situations you may have not encountered yet in your expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what you said earlier about like, what was my intent and what was the impact? Like impact always to me means more than my intent. Like, oh, I didn't mean to, give this kind of what felt like hard advice about menopause, but the impact was that she felt unseen and unheard.
Yeah.
And so the impact was always more important than the intent, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think it's also something to talk about with this topic is like, there's people who are, in monogamous relationships where their bodies are going to change as we get older, not just menopause, but like, we're going to get older. Both parties are going to get older unless you keep trading them for a younger model. And even then, and you know what, ladies, go ahead. The men have been doing it for a long time. By all means, I have no judgment on that harm reduction if that works for you. But what are your like? I'm obviously. You mentioned like having that conversation with your partner. It feels like that conversation is going to change over time, maybe even constantly, maybe even in a month, but also like over the course of our relationship. How have you seen people approach that as we get older, our bodies are going to change. So like, how have you seen people approach that?
Yeah. Well, I think if we can think about it as a beautiful thing, meaning you're not having sex with the same person for 40, 50 years. It's the same person in your bedroom, but you are totally new people because of your experiences and because of what you've been through and what you're currently going through. And so in a way, it's kind of like it brings that novelty, which we thrive off of in sex. We want things to be novel all the time in sex. And so what I like to teach couples is that your best bet for a long-term sexually pleasurable relationship is sexual resiliency. And what I mean by that is the ability to look at your sex life and go, okay, where can we pivot? Where can we do something different? Okay, you're having trouble with you're having erectile issues, right? Where can we pivot to where we still experience some really beautiful pleasure and connection, but maybe an erection isn't always required, right? So how do we define sex more broadly? If we define sex based on what we want to feel instead of what we do, right? Then sex becomes like very open, and maybe sex when we first got together was penis and vagina, so heteronormative, right? But maybe as we age, sex is we're both laying down and touching each other, or maybe sex as we age is you giving me some looks across the table from waffles when we're 70, and I feel all of those fun, beautiful things again. I used to go and teach courses for the early onset on Alzheimer's unit, where you have a partner without Alzheimer's and a partner who has just been diagnosed. And we're going to talk about, okay, as the disease progresses, how do you still connect intimately when possibly some consent is going to come off the table eventually, because consent is not there anymore or offered anymore, right? What's your sex going to look like? Is it holding hands on the porch while you watch the sunrise? Is that you're going to be your sex eventually, right? And so being able to redefine it over time is the key to sexual resiliency.
Yeah. It's almost like you have to like put through, like every year you're checking your insurance things. Every year you're checking, you're making sure you've updated all these things. Maybe you're like, hey, where's our consent on these things?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. I don't know if we talked about this in the last episode. We might have. So forgive me, everyone, if yours is redundant.
No, you're
but
fine.
When you talked about the Alzheimer's thing, this is there was a New York Times article on elderly sexually active adults.
Yeah.
And how much criticism. There was a judge whose husband has Alzheimer's, and like he had a partner in the hospital that he was with, and she was like, so like there was a picture or something where this judge was famous judge on the Supreme Court, was sitting with her husband who has Alzheimer's, who was also sitting with his partner from the hospital, and people are like, how could she do that? It's like everything is on her, like it's just being like brutalized, and it's like her husband has Alzheimer's, he's in a hospital, and we're judging that these two people who are like on a different road in their brain than the rest of us are having some sort of consensual relationship,
non-monogamous.
Yeah. And so I just felt so bad for her, but the whole article kind of went into like where we as adults of like adult children have got to let their parents' sexual behaviors be what they want them to be, and it's not our choice.
Yes. Yeah, you can't regulate that. Yeah.
They try to regulate you, but now you don't get to do it back.
You don't get to do it. You don't get to do it. And it's part of like, if you think about, you know, part of thriving for a parent might be their sexuality and their ability to feel pleasure in that way. And, you know, if we can just move past the puritanical shame around sex, and if we can just look at it like, oh, what a beautiful thing that they can still engage in that helps them feel human, right? Sex just humanizes us. Pleasure just humanizes us. And so if we can just move past our own stuff, you know, then it's like, oh yeah, that's actually a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. The moving past the puritanical shame. I feel like that might be your other book.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
I feel like it's a series.
I think you're right. I think you are totally right.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Celeste, I just adore our conversations. I love exploring this topic with you. I know that it affects so many people. And so just being able to bring you into their world, into their ears, so they can explore more with you. Because, you know, being until we see it is really hard to do if you are not feeling seen and if you are not experiencing all parts of yourself. And it can be really difficult to go out there in the world if like you also don't feel super strong in your sex life or how you feel in your body and all of that stuff. So this is just a really wonderful topic. This will not be the last time we have you on the show, just because I fucking love you. So
good. Let's do it.
Yeah. We'll just have at least an annual, if not semi-annual series.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll do a whole series. It's my podcast. I can do what I want.
You can do whatever you want.
Before I let you go, we're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to find out people can follow you, work with you, and then your Beit action items. All right, Dr. Celeste, where do you like to hang out? What's your favorite social places? What's your website? Where can people work with you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Celeste Holbrook. That's Dr. Celeste Holbrook, where we have a lot of fun and we sling a lot of dildos. And you can find me on my website at drcelesteholbrook.com, where we can work together one-on-one, or I can work with you and your partner to create a sex life that feels pleasurable for both of you. And I just love to hear from you. I love hearing what you got to say.
Yeah.
Maybe I can learn a little bit from y'all.
Yeah. So you had a DM. If you aren't, I hope that you feel safe and secure to share what you took away from this episode, because it would be part of that taking away the shame of this topic.
That's right.
So I would love for you to share publicly, but at the very least, you must DM her your takeaways.
Yay. Yeah, that would be so great. I would love that.
Yeah. So before I let you go, we had some great ones from you last time, but bold, executable, intrinsic, targeted steps people can take to be it till they see it. What do you have for us?
Well, I am trying to enact this in my own life. I am trying to get on a TEDx stage to talk about pleasure. And so I am using the idea of discipline to do and submit applications even when I don't want to, like not waiting for motivation. So that would probably be what I have to offer today is discipline used to scare me because I thought it took away freedom, but in reality, discipline has opened me up to lots of opportunities. So discipline, even when you don't feel motivated.
What a great reframe of that word.
Thanks. Yeah, I hated that word before. I hated it.
Well, because it sounds like you need to be disciplined.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
punishment.
yeah. But you're actually taking as like, if I am disciplined on this thing that I want, even if I don't want to do it right now, it's going to open up the doors for the things I want. I love that. And you must let us know when you get a TEDx, because we have to share it. We'll have to put it in the show notes. We'll have to have you back. We'll put it in the FYFs. It's our new segment on the Be It Pod on Fridays. It's Fuck Yeah Friday. So you must share a win. So we'll have to share yours when that happens. Oh, I love you. You're amazing. You're doing such amazing work for people everywhere, and especially women. So thank you for being here. Everyone, thank you for listening. Please, I'd love for you to share this publicly. It'd be amazing. It'd be a step and a thing of you. And look at me. I'm helping get rid of shame around this topic. However, at the very least, maybe text it to a friend. Let us get us a review, and let Dr. Celeste Holbrook know what your takeaways were. I would love to hear them. And until next time, be it till you see it.
That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of the Bloom Podcast Network.
It's written, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Kroll.
It is produced and edited by the epic team at Diseño.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to Melissa Solomon for creating our visuals, and Semena Velazquez for our transcriptions.
Also to Angelina Herrico for adding all the content to our website, and finally to Meredith Kroll for keeping us all on point and on time.